Now look, before I say what I got to say, because I already seen the trailer, I already sat down, watched the whole thing from beginning to end. Before I say this, let me go ahead and make this perfectly clear. Number one, I'm still gonna reserve judgment before I go and see this movie, because 9 times out of 10 I'm probably going to see this movie to see the different takes that they give on it. And two, before I say what I got to say, let me go ahead and make this clear. I am a huge fan of The Crow, and not only have I seen the Brandon Lee movie like 100 times, but in my opinion this is probably hands down the greatest comic book adaptation I've ever seen. I will even go as far to say that it's better than The Dark Knight. Like, you could fight me on this one. And not only have I seen this movie, but I've also seen The Crow City of Angels, The Crow Salvation, and even The Crow Wicked Prayer. And not just with movies, but I pretty much read almost any single Crow comic book I can get my hands on. So check this out. As I was going through my comics and reorganizing them and repackaging them, because you know, sometimes the bags can get messed up, I decided to pull out every single piece of Crow comics and books that I could find. Like, I bought the entirety of The Crow Flesh and Blood, still trying to find the rest of Memento Mori, managed to collect the entire run of The Crow Pestilence. This was the very first copy of the Crow graphic novel that I got back in high school. As you could tell, it's pretty much seen better days, but this is the very first Crow comic that I ever got. And then we got the special edition with all the panels that have never been released by James O'Barr himself, and managed to find 2 of the HarperCollins Crow novels. I even seen The Crow Stairway to Heaven. Like, how many of y'all even knew this show existed? I literally have the soundtrack on my phone and I'm still listening to it to this day, along with the soundtrack to The City of Angels, including the original score for the movie. So yeah, it goes to show you I'm a huge fan of this character. So when I saw this, I decided to keep it an open mind, you know what I'm saying? Because it's been like, what, years since we had a Crow movie? And I'm gonna go ahead and give it the pros and cons. The pro is that the trailer makes it every bit as The Crow as I would expect it to. It still managed to keep the story in place to where once a person dies, the Crow carries their soul off to the land of the dead, but if something happens to that soul to where it can't rest, the Crow brings them back to put the wrong things right. Because that's literally the whole point of the series. The Crow literally brings a person back in order to get revenge on the person that literally killed them or their loved ones in the first place. And I love how they try to make it clear that they're not trying to make this kind of like the original Brandon Lee film or any of the other Crow movies. This is just its own thing with a lot of gory justice to dispense. And then you got the con, and that is, you cannot tell me that this is Eric Draven. He looks as much like Eric Draven as Jared Leto's Joker looks like Heath Ledger's Joker. Like, the comparison is night and day. Like, come on, out of all people, why did it have to be Eric Draven? It didn't have to be him. You could have picked anybody. Like, you could have made up an entirely different character and then this movie would still work. I mean, hell, the other movies did that. Like, say what you want about these movies, even if they did suck, they still managed to keep the core concept of The Crow with a completely different actor playing a completely different character. And each movie drives home the concept that Eric Draven was not the only one that was brought back by The Crow, because there were plenty others. And honestly, that's what made the franchise even more interesting, because it clearly shows that it doesn't always have to be Eric Draven, because there's so many more people that have been brought back from the dead. And not only are you given a new character in a familiar situation, but there's always a different twist when it comes to the mythos of The Crow itself. And as they show many times in these different stories and movies, there's always the different rules and limitations that are pretty much put on the person that's brought back. Like, if you stray from the path, you won't be able to reunite with your loved ones and you're pretty much a walking corpse that is doomed to roam the earth. Or if you believe that you finished your work and killed the person responsible, then you lose the power of the Crow. I still don't know how that works, but I'm gonna have to watch this movie to figure it out. Or rehash the same plot point from the first movie, where if the Crow winds up getting hurt or shot, then you lose its power. And with each different story, there's always different rules and limitations. That not only keeps the franchise interesting, but also puts a new spin on things. And again, if this character could have been anyone other than Eric Draven, I wouldn't have a problem with this. But there is no way in hell you can convince me this is Eric Draven otherwise. I'm sorry. But aside from that, I honestly think this movie might be a good time. Despite how I feel about the character, this does look like it pretty much pulls everything from the comics. A dude and his girlfriend gets killed by a bunch of assholes, gets brought back by the Crow, and dispenses some hardcore justice. You already know I'm all in for it. But to say that this is Eric Draven, yeah, no. Maybe I'm just biased because I've been reading The Crow for far too long, but I'm sorry, this just doesn't feel like Eric Draven to me. I'm excited for the film, just not all that crazy about the character. But that's my 2 cents. What do you guys think about this movie? Do you think it's going to be good? Do you think it's going to be bad? Do you think it's going to follow the source material or do something different? Whatever your thoughts, comment them down below and let me know. And while we're at it, what's your favorite piece of Crow media? It could be the comics, the books, the movies, the soundtrack, whatever it is, comment down below. And I'll catch you guys in the next one.